KTFA Members News and Views Wednesday, May 15, 2024. Listen to the full version on the official dinarport.com website and become our supporter on Patreon. KTFA, Claire, the Prime Minister receives the Vice President of the World Bank for the Middle East and North Africa. 5/15/2024 Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani received Al-Ba'a, Vice President of the World Bank for the Middle East and North Africa. The Prime Minister's media office said in a statement, seen by Al-Iqtisad News, that Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani received the Vice President of the World Bank for the Middle East and North Africa region. Claire, Securities. We are studying the possibility of licensing brokerage companies to trade in shares on international stock exchanges. May 15, 2024, Chairman of the Securities Commission, Faisal Al-Hames, confirmed today, Wednesday, that the authority is studying the possibility of licensing brokerage companies to trade in shares on international stock exchanges. Al-Hames said in a statement received by Al-Iqtisad News the authority has begun studying the licensing of brokerage companies to trade in shares on global stock exchanges through a technical committee within it. He added the authority is working seriously to support and develop the stock market by studying the licensing of brokerage companies to enable them to trade in shares on international stock exchanges for the first time in Iraq. He explained, this step comes in the context of protecting the rights of citizens to trade through brokerage companies that practice this activity without an official license from the Securities Commission, which seeks to develop the financial markets in the country, noting that the Commission is working to provide a stimulating and regulated investment environment. It contributes to enhancing confidence among investors and raising Iraq's position in global financial markets. Claire, the reform process will begin with the government banking sector, which represents 85%, Sudanese advisor. May 15, 2024, Mazar Saleh, advisor to the Prime Minister for Financial Affairs, said today, Wednesday, that the government banking sector represents 85% of banking work in Iraq. And there is a reform process that will begin from it, indicating that the sanctions that affected the banks are an opportunity for reform. Saleh confirmed in a statement to the official agency, followed by the 964 network, that Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani is keen to protect national capital. In addition to the fact that banking institutions need reform, indicating that what happened in depriving some banks of foreign currency is an opportunity to restore structuring and organizing it. He added, there is a program to reform the banking sector by starting with the government sector because the government banking sector dominates 85% of banking work. And the rest of the small emerging markets, although their capital constitutes 78% of the banking system's capital. But they need to be reorganized and restructured to transform into correct market institutions, integrate with the global economic system and have a role in finance and economic development. He pointed out that there is a reform process in Iraq that begins with the government banking sector and then the private sector, pointing out that the injustice that happened to the banks is an opportunity for reform. Claire, al-Sudani briefs Washington on economic and financial reform efforts and calls on its companies to invest in Iraq. May 15, 2024, on Wednesday, Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani briefed U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Energy Resources Affairs Jeffrey Payette on the government's efforts and steps in the field of economic and financial reform, calling on American companies to work and invest in Iraq. In the meeting, which was attended by the U.S. Ambassador to Iraq, the most prominent files of cooperation in the field of energy, in all its forms, and ways to develop it were reviewed in a way that contributes to achieving common interests, according to a statement issued by al-Sudani's office and received by Shafaq news agency. During the meeting, al-Sudani stressed the government's keenness to implement its executive approach within the axis of achieving energy self-sufficiency in the areas of exploiting locally produced natural and associated gas, generating electricity, providing petroleum derivatives, and producing chemical fertilizers and petrochemical materials. Pointing to the memorandums of understanding that were signed during his visit to the United States of America last April, which is being implemented on the ground. Al-Sudani pointed to the government's efforts and steps in the field of economic and financial reform, especially in the areas of tax, customs, and the banking sector, and completing the elements of the ideal investment environment, calling on American companies to work and invest in Iraq. For his part, Payet praised the efforts of the Iraqi government in developing the energy sector. He also referred to the joint statement of the Prime Minister and U.S. President Joseph Biden, which represents a roadmap and framework for fruitful work and cooperation, stressing the desire of American companies to invest and expand their activities inside Iraq. Frank 26, an extraordinary session. For an extraordinary announcement, F26. Sudanese directs to hold an extraordinary session next Sunday to discuss the 2024 budget schedules. Today, Tuesday, Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani directed that an extraordinary session of the Council be held next Sunday to discuss the federal budget schedules for the year 2024. Al-Sudani's media office stated in a statement received by Mawazi News the Prime Minister directed that an extraordinary session of the Council be held on Sunday next, corresponding to May 19, to discuss the federal budget schedules for the year 2024. He added, Al-Sudani also directed the formation of a committee headed by a representative of the Ministry of Planning and membership of representatives of the Ministry of Finance, the Council of Advisors, the General Secretariat of the Council of Ministers, and the Federal Public Service Council, which will undertake a re-examination of the draft law on the Public Service Institute and submit its recommendations within a working month to the Council of Ministers for consideration. The appropriate decision. The Prime Minister, Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, and the President of the Iraqi Kurdistan region, Nekarvan Barzani, stressed the continuation of dialogues and meetings between the two sides at various levels. The Prime Minister's media office stated in a statement received by the Iraqi news agency, INA, that Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani received, today, Tuesday, the President of the Iraqi Kurdistan region, Nekarvan Barzani, and during the meeting, the general conditions in the country and a number of issues at the national level were discussed, as well as the situation in the Kurdistan region of Iraq, and the government's actions in implementing its strategic plans, which relate to strengthening the Iraqi economy and achieving development and prosperity for all the Iraqi people. He added, the meeting also witnessed discussion of a number of common files, and an emphasis on continuing dialogues and meetings between the two sides at various levels, within the framework of reaching sustainable solutions within the Constitution and the law. Claire, a deficit exceeding 75 trillion, and this is the date of its arrival. Parliament's finances talk about the 2024 budget. May 13, 2024, today, Monday, the Parliamentary Finance Committee expected the schedules of the General Budget Law from the government to reach the House of Representatives this week, while it determined the expected deficit percentage. Committee member Faisal Al-Naili said, in an interview followed by Al-Iqtisad News, that the House of Representatives is awaiting the arrival of the budget schedules and the start of discussing its provisions and making the necessary amendments to them by the Finance Committee to ensure the proper implementation of the government curriculum. He pointed out that indicators confirm that the schedules will reach the House of Representatives this week in order to proceed with their approval as quickly as possible. In turn, a member of the Parliamentary Finance Committee, Moin Al-Kadhimi, revealed the expected deficit in the current year's budget, indicating that it may exceed 75 trillion dinars. Al-Kadhimi said, the current year's budget amounts to 228 trillion dinars, with a planned deficit of up to 75 trillion. He added, the budget included total revenues and spending in the amount of 150 trillion dinars, indicating that the government seeks for actual spending to be 228 trillion. He pointed out that the committee will amend the budget schedules during the second reading. Claire, International Development opens a new branch in Times Square in Basra. May 15, 2024, the International Development Bank announced the opening of a new branch in the Times Square Center in Basra Governorate, confirming its adoption of a new strategy to enhance banking services and stimulate investment in southern Iraq. He said in a statement received by Shafaq news agency, the first day of yesterday, May 13. The International Development Bank opened its second branch in Basra Governorate, in Times Square Mall, to provide its banking services to citizens and businessmen in this vital region of southern Iraq. He stated that this opening comes within the bank's strategy to expand and modernize its effective network of branches, with the aim of providing high-quality and convenient banking services to customers. The bank's authorized director, Saad Fake, said that this branch will be an important tributary to economic development in Basra and will enhance investment and growth opportunities in the region.